Richard,
Go
I
ahead.
just so you know, treat me like completely no idea, nothing, and which is I'm going to just be on this call with
Sure.
completely open blank board, and that's why I'm
Okay.
actually even more excited. So
Okay,
just
great.
feel free to be going into any kind of explanation, any description.
Okay, great.
Can give me a summarized version of this, which is that's why I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, great. So I've come up with a few questions that I thought might be interesting for, some of the viewers or listeners. That at the moment within the industry, I know certainly in Hong Kong, it was very, very deregulated. I mean, even in the UK, I've been back in England for a couple of years now. There's talk of legislation around sustainability for hotels because they are considered to be, huge wasters of energy, and there are one or two companies that they've sort of jumped on the bandwagon in terms of doing audits for hotels. But it's a very hard thing to monetize. So I think some of these companies are finding it difficult to find a way of making it a business. Because I mean, how much is a hotel willing to pay for an audit?
Hmm.
And there doesn't seem to be any sort of uniform system of like you have the uniform system of accounts for hotels when they're looking at their finances. There doesn't seem to be like a set of KPIs or tools to measure the carbon footprint of a hotel, so to speak. I mean, you can look at utility bills and that type of thing, but whether you measure it as a cost per occupied room or per guest or whatever. So I think that there are quite a few companies out there who are trying to get into this, but in Asia, it's all over the place. And I mean, there are customers who are looking to, um, you know, purchase a room night at a hotel that is considered to be, sustainable or whatever, or a brand. But at the moment, I was wondering in New York whether there are any specific sort of environmental regulations that impact sustainable practices in hotels, in terms of areas like linen or towels or um, uniforms, that type of thing. Because I mean, uniforms do use a huge amount of laundering costs and that type of thing. But whether in New York it's completely unregulated or whether there are some regulations for properties, I don't know whether you have any idea about that.
When we speak about New York for the purposes of this, we'll differentiate because out in Montauk, where Darshana is right now,
Right.
is a little bit different. That's a much more rural and beachfront community, and
Yeah.
naturally, there are some expectations from the community and from all of the nature conservation specialists around that we uphold at our properties out there.
Mm.
But I'll speak to New York City briefly on that. And then, DJ, if you want to chime in, please do.
Hmm.
So, hotels specifically are a great question, but I'll take one step back. New York City has, it's called Local Law 33. Each building in the city gets an efficiency grade, gets an energy efficiency grade. And in 2019, those standards were tightened even further. So when you walk around the city, you will look at every single building and you'll see energy efficiency A, B, D, F. And so from a citywide standpoint, there are certainly inspections that are coming in, audits that are happening. There's a standardization of the building efficiency itself. Now, what business is done in that building and how that is being measured, there are a few companies that DJ and I have actually interviewed who are trying to do just that, trying to standardize the ESG reporting, particularly in hotels, in some cases, just businesses in general. Um, and we've worked with a few just to test out their products and see if it's maybe something we want to continue forward with. But there is one that we approached and that two of our hotels are on at this moment. It's called Allo Index. And while it is auditing and collecting information, It's not necessarily a standard or certification or anything that you can achieve. It
Right.
gives you an Allo Index score that is proprietary to Allo Index, but secondarily is also an RFP platform.
Right.
And so it's very tailored to hotels because of that. So companies that want to ensure that they are only selecting from those hotels that have, a certain level of Allo Index ESG initiatives in place can
Right.
use that platform to book hotels.
Okay.
And so, you've got the New York City specific building efficiency, and then we're starting to see more platforms and more initiatives like things like Allo Index.
Right. Right. But is there anything specific around like textiles, linen, that type of thing? Because I mean, if you think of what happens to all the discarded sheets and towels, and I mean, the life cycle is quite short, and uniforms and things like that. Whether there's a is how do they actually measure the impact of something like linen or uniforms? Do you know?
Quite honestly, for laundry, I don't know. I can maybe name one or two hotels that do their own laundry in house because everything is a centralized laundry center. Having toured a few of those facilities, I know that they also are inspected to their own set of standards.
Right.
I do have some contacts in that world if you'd like to speak with them directly, those that operate these
Mm,
large laundry facilities.
mm.
But I can't speak to their
No,
own
no.
specific grading.
So they probably just donate it to somebody or send it off to an incinerator.
Oh, surplus or unusables? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the practice in New York at least is it's the hotel's property, so the hotel retains all of the unusables.
yeah.
So even if it's stained or torn, you still get it back. Now at 11 Howard,
Mm,
down in Soho, we used to give those while we couldn't use them in a luxury hotel setting, we would give them to what's called the Bowery Mission,
mm.
which is a local shelter in around the corner,
Right,
and they would use them for their purposes, which was
right,
great.
right,
But that's a one off. Can't say that's everyone.
right. Because I think one of the things that Cresswell are looking at doing now is because they're able to what they call downcycle, which is
Hmm.
essentially buying back from a property. Let's say you imagine a big casino in Macau or in
Hmm.
Las Vegas with thousands of rooms. You imagine the volume of inventory that is just being thrown out or got rid of. So they're looking at maybe buying it back from a property as part and parcel of a kind of a deal where if you were to purchase all your linen or uniforms from them, they'd guarantee to buy back all the discarded stuff, which they would then downcycle, which means it would be used for um, other types of uses like underlay, carpet underlay,
Right.
or other fabrics where they don't have to necessarily have very very high quality. But this is something that is now something that they are trying to encourage properties to do, which is to sell them basically discarded stuff. I mean, and if you imagine just the fashion industry, how much stuff. I mean, a lot of these companies, they won't sell it off because it would devalue the brand, right? So they destroy it, and so I think that there's definitely a market for it. So, do you think that there are any real challenges in terms of implementing this sort of sustainable textile practices? I mean, or any sustainable ESG practices in where you guys are operating? I mean, is it hard to get owners to agree to this sort of thing?
Darshna, why don't you take that question?
I think so. Richard, few things. I'm going to go on a little bit of an indirect route
Right.
first. So, not talking about hotels, not talking about fashion. I'm going to
Okay.
reference consumer product goods industry.
Right.
In consumer product goods, fast moving consumer product goods specifically, um, over a few decades, this momentum started in that space before it started anywhere else because everything we touch in our life has to come in a package, right?
Yeah.
Everything has to be picked up from a shelf for the most part. unless you go to farmers market with your own bag. That being said, that industry got pressure and that industry got incentivized more
Mm-hmm.
to why we need to do what we need to do in terms of sustainability and the impact. But ultimately, a lot of this came down to the companies not only just claiming we are doing good, but it also started with what is the real incentive for them as well, because at the
Mm.
end of the day we are in the business, right?
Yep.
And the reason I'm talking about consumer product goods, because these type of industries are sometimes finding 9 to 10 million dollars of smart spending. I don't want to call it cost savings,
Mm.
smart spending, just from doing the right thing for sustainability, whether it's
Right.
by creating something at the beginning of the process that is going to waste less, that by working with the right vendors in manufacturing or in any service industry, doesn't matter. Ultimately it all comes down to, whether we like it or not, what are they getting out of it,
Yeah.
right? So coming back to this industry now, what I am seeing as somebody coming from CPG world, and as Kat and I started this project last year, the little bit glimpse of what I'm getting from being also part of ownership, as well as also somebody who's trying to push the impact agenda, whether it's social, whether it's environmental, whether it's community, economical, all of it. It is actually extremely difficult. And I'll tell you from two facets of it. Unless and until, and keeping the ownership out of it, let's start with customers. Who are our customers? There are several types of customers that hotel industry deal with, but one, for say example, transient is what we obviously would like to see more impact and want them to be wanting this kind of impact. But we have corporate clients, right? And who are these corporate clients? Corporate clients, for an example, could be a CPG guy, right? So these people
Right.
have their own agenda. These people want
Yeah.
to be able to claim something, to be able to do something on their financial reporting, all of that. All comes down to, are my vendors doing something, and am I going to be able to leverage from what they're doing to claim something? So that's
Right.
one way of
Right.
looking at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Second is, yes, there is a true impact factor, but most of the times, coming from CPG environment, it's not just the true impact that is being that's not the driving factor for these folks. So
Mm.
now
Mm.
hotel industry is also starting to gear up. Besides, regulations are coming in United States. We hear that next year, 2025 onwards, we are going to see some tougher, actually mandatory regulations that will come through. We just don't know what those are, but things will start becoming mandatory for hotels to start doing things they don't have choice for. But apart
Right.
from that, customers are asking, for RFPs that are coming to our salespeople. So these customers are asking all these questions that sometimes it sounds all simple and basic, and we just want to fill that spreadsheet. But actually, there are some very tough questions that cannot be just overnight be implemented and cannot be done right away. But right there is your incentive. If this is being assessed right, if this is being understood right, what your customers are looking for in terms of meeting that utmost requirement, you do have the ROI factor right there. And
Right.
that is one driving factor for hotel industry. Second is just knowing and keeping an eye that industry, at the end of the day, your end customers, whether it's transient or corporate, they are moving in that direction. For example, California, 56% of just customers in general, not corporate, they do look for green hotels. They look for hotels that are being impact driven. That is
Mm.
10 years ago, only 29%. So if you're not seeing something right now, you're going to see something later.
Yeah.
Ownerships are also two types. There could be a private ownership, and there could be a mix between an equity as well as private equity, hedge fund, doesn't matter, and group of private equity owners, or you have a fully private owner. For example, one of our private equity investors that we have, they are claiming 100% of their real estate development is green. Now, this is something we don't want to think about. We are so busy doing our operations, we are so busy running our business because revenue is everything. But it does matter what our owners, actually ultimate owners, are also claiming. So you have that, you need to be able to grab that as a little advantage and incentive for wanting to do something. But while
Right.
also wanting to do something, you still need to show them, a, there is customers that are going to want to spend on us, as well as, and appreciate the impact part. And b, we are also going to look at some of the operational efficiency for ourselves. If
Right.
we don't look at this as our own operational efficiency, we are not going to find the benefit just from, okay, the sales is coming in. So it's a
Yeah.
twofold. For owners, it is extremely difficult. Like, I am part of this process where I am seeing the first thing I pitch to my family, first thing I'm getting is my focus right now is revenue. I cannot
Mm.
go after this impact. And
Yeah.
as an owner, I understand. So now between Kat and I are trying to strategize for, because we are boutique hotels. Now, if we were a franchise, that's a very different, completely. You're talking two different games between
Yeah.
franchise as a private ownership, boutique ownership. Boutique ownership. Now, there are three of us trying to figure out what are our low hanging fruits that is not just going to give us operational efficiency, as well as, let's say we went after this certification, can we market it, can we amplify it in terms that it's sellable and customers are coming in. Now
Mm.
we've been given a hard test. Kat and I have to work on finding low hanging fruits that are going to not only bring the customers through marketing and sales that want to be in our hotel because we are doing these things right, but we
Mm.
also have to be able to go specific, which is we have to bring them weekdays. So it
Right.
all comes down to the neck of the bottle when it comes to ownership. What are their objectives? Can
Yeah.
I bring the impact and their bottom line objectives at the initial roadmap? Can we do that? And if we can do that, then I believe you have a roadmap that can be bigger picture, that is quite bit impact driven and quite big business driven.
Right.
So
Right.
I know this is sounding super.
No, that's a very interesting. It's a very interesting analogy. I think that you've covered some really important points there, and thank you. That's I'm really pleased that you talked about that. And I think that when you know just the end part there where you talked about you know you having to look for low hanging fruit, and it's got to have it's got to be able to balance itself out. I mean, you can go out and say, I know there's a lot of greenwashing out there as well, which maybe we can talk about at the moment in a minute. But when I was last, when I came to New York the last time, I didn't stay at 11 Howard. I stayed at with One Hotels. Now they were and I also went down to Miami. And when I think about I mean, One Hotels are not on the grand scale of like a Marriott franchise, but they're still relatively small.
Mhm.
I know that they've just opened one in China in Sanya, and I was wondering how they were going to export, if you like, their sustainability, ESG, eco-friendly model because it the whole brand seems to sit on this sort of concept, and they've been very successful with it. And I've stayed at their properties, um, and somehow they managed to balance not luxury, I wouldn't say, because it's not really a luxury brand, but it's getting up there with sustainable practices, and there seems to be a certain demographic within the industry that appeals to, and they I mean, how I don't know whether whether they're profitable or successful, but would you say that was a brand that one could look to if you're looking for low-hanging fruit and get ideas from as to how they do it well? I mean, is that a brand that you guys are looking at? One Hotels?
Kat, do you have an opinion? I do have one opinion around it, but
Yeah, I mean, I would say we always look at any leader in any space.
Mm.
One Hotels does have a good reputation here in New York City, especially. But I think when we look for a hotel to model ourselves after, because we are boutique focused, we often try and find other similar products that are
Okay.
maybe leading even us a little bit more in their ESG initiatives to model ourselves after. And so, we've gone to a few regenerative travel conferences and found independent operators that have inspired us with their low hanging fruit, or in some cases, much higher hanging fruit, that give us ideas and things that we can implement because their model is a little bit more similar to ours. Um, but of course, when you look at city hotels and you can see, one Central Park, for example, they do have some great practices, and we can all model after that.
Were you going to say something, DJ?
yeah. So Niket is completely right. I think that's actually also it's to me it's a double-edged sword. I feel like, and Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's like almost like you get into the pressure of following through. And this is a great example of one of those, like, how do you follow through?
Yeah.
But the opinion that I have, so what I did is, and I actually called Kat on a video call that one time that I stayed at one. And I stayed at one hotel near Central Park in New York City. And I purposely did a staycation. I stayed a block away. My apartment was block away from there, but I
Mm,
just checked in for one night, made a staycation out of it. And what I got to understand, without claiming that we know anything about their financials and the visibility on how successful, but my assessment of that property was right timing and right people. The
mm,
reason I say this, because you hit the nail on one thing. They found a good balance of luxury, and they found a good balance of creating that impact.
yeah.
So I think they found a niche in the beginning of the process. There is a possibility they did have the right amount of funding and the right investors that went
Mm,
after something like that. So they had good capital to start with.
yeah.
That good capital allowed them to create the impact driven experiences. When I say
Mm,
experiences, is when you walk in there, the way their hotels are positioned, you really feel different and you feel
yes.
good, right?
Right.
The
Right.
bathroom that I gave a video tour to Kat
Right.
drew my attention immediately. And I came back home and I told RJ, I said, listen, we got to do something in our property in California. A little wooden block made hourglass, like the time hourglass with the sand. So simple, but it was so beautifully made, the whole.
Yes.
And
Yes.
customers, if you weren't environmental friend, like you weren't one of those people who care about environment, you still immediately think, oh, this is such a great idea, this hotel is
Yeah.
great. So I think their price point, it's expensive
Mm,
that hotel is expensive to stay at. Their
yes.
price point, to me, what I get out of this is they found a balance to be able to make that profitability that's allowing them to continue to do what they're doing. And I
Mm,
think that is the key. But they've created these very specific
yes.
touch points. I don't even want to call it experience, but the touch points.
Yes.
Because within one hotel, I saw few. So that's my assessment on this particular.
Yeah.
I think they've been successful being able to drive that. And
Right.
why not? You do have clients who can pay that kind of, and they've made
Sure.
their name doing that. So,
Yeah.
but I
No, I
could be
agree. I think if you're creating a brand from scratch, which is what they did,
Hmm.
then they went out and sourced, you know, old railway sleepers and buildings that had been demolished and reused all that timber and I think that it's I mean you wouldn't want to do that to an existing building, rip everything out and replace it with, recycled material. But the fact that they started from ground zero and were
Right.
able to implement those things, and I completely agree with you that I saw the hourglass thing myself. And one of the things that intrigued me was how they did the water spout thing in the room. The instead of having the plastic bottles, they had a faucet in the room. But when I went back to Hong Kong, the first thing I said to my chief engineer was, "Can we?" And I took all kinds of photographs of it and everything. And I said, "Could we put this into our hotel?" And he said, "Sure, but we don't need all this paraphernalia." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No." He said, "I can just tap off the water input in the guest room, right? And we put in a very, very high resolution filter, thousands of microns filter. And then we just have a faucet in the bathroom where we put a jug and the guests can take it. And and I said, well, how much would it cost? And I think it was something ridiculously low, like 15 or 20 US dollars per room.
Wow.
So I said, do it. And we put it in all our rooms. The guests started talking about it. They're raving about it. Some of the other GMs in Hong Kong were saying, hey, can we come and have a look at this thing that you did? And I,
yeah.
I said,
It's
sure. And they came and looked at it, and it started this sort of snowball effect. And before
Right.
you knew it, there were about 10
uh,
hotels in Hong Kong that all had the same thing. But it was intriguing because it was a very cheap thing to do, but it had quite a profound effect.
Yeah.
And I think
I
that,
call this, Richard, it's a design, customer touch
yes,
point experience. That I
yeah,
think they nailed it
yeah,
very uniquely. And
yeah,
I think design is a key word that should also be emphasized here.
yeah,
Hmm.
Customer touch point design
yeah,
that can play a huge role in driving,
yeah.
um, you know.
And I think the other thing you mentioned, DJ and Kat, is that with that brand, there's a lot of, if you go to the bottom of the page of their website, they talk a lot about partnerships, who they partner with for the food, where the food come from, who they partner, and it's all about partnerships. So I wonder whether they get some very lucrative deals from those customers, from those vendors, because they're able to get a foot in the door with that brand. And that's why I was wondering, with something like textiles and uniforms, because you're not having to literally go into a property and spend an inordinate amount of money. I mean, those things are those are things that you're going to need anyway, right? Now, if a vendor was to come to you and say, look, I can give you, when you next purchase sheets or towels or uniforms for your staff, right, I can give you a product that is made from bamboo or plastic or whatever, and it's as good and it feels as good, and your customers are going to like it, and your staff are going to feel very proud of wearing it because it's doing something for the planet, and I can give it to you at 30% less than what you can buy it for. And when it's used to a degree where you can't use it anymore, I'll buy it back off of you. I mean, that to me would like be a good way of getting the ball started. I mean, if you can't change other things that are going to be costly, that could be something that a hotel could do, or a restaurant even, relatively inexpensively. But I think that, with that type of thing, the brand might turn around and say, well, how do I know? Where's your factory? If your
Mm,
factory is in China, how do I know that you're not sending people? People are working in a sweatshop, 80 hours a week, and it's not just about the product. It's the
right.
whole ethos that goes with it, isn't it? So the problem with this is that there doesn't seem to be any sort of certification that would that a company like yours could say, oh yeah, we like this for our boutique hotels. How do we know, without actually having to get on a plane and fly over to the factory, how do we know that these people are ticking all the boxes and that this is a credible company, right? Because I mean, they can say anything they want behind a website, right? But when it actually comes to the practices, so is there anything that you would look for to be able to certify that that a company like that, whether it's uniforms or textile or anything else for that matter, um, you know, whether you're making merchandising or packaging or whatever, what would
Hmm.
you be looking for to endorse the origin of those types of product? Is there anything that you guys would look at?
DJ, if you don't mind, I'll take this one. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit broader than just textiles, but there's a hyper focus on local, right? Just innately, if something is produced in a separate country, there's a that has to travel, and when it travels, that is a lot of emissions, and that is impacting the carbon footprint of this product and ultimately the hotel that is using it. So um, a small low hanging fruit. We use a lot of local products in our minibar, for example. They're produced in New York, they're manufactured in New York, they're bottled in New York. They ship maybe 10 miles to come to our hotels, and that's that. So, right off the bat, local products, out in the Hamptons, we have a few vineyards. If we look at local wines, California, same conversation. Just trying to tap into the local community is probably one of the first things that we look at,
Right.
um, without having to go into the specifics of certifications and things like that. Just proximity is so important.
Right, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah, so, and I guess I noticed that at 11 Howard, actually. I mean, you had some smoothies or something that you'd left out for me, which, I think had been made that morning. So I think that's a very powerful thing, that you're supporting the local farmers and local cheese manufacturer, butter, whatever it happens to be.
And while
And
that's an environmental impact, it also goes towards your social and governance
sure,
scores, if you will, or your impact nonetheless. If you can support a local business, I mean,
yeah. And so therefore, if you're importing something from China, that's not going to do you a lot of. I mean, it's going to be some eyebrows raised about around that. Yeah.
yeah, and it could be a wonderfully made, beautiful product that is supporting all of the right
Mm,
goals, but is there a company that's doing the same thing that is more localized
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we can support?
yeah. So if there was a company, say locally, that was doing this sort of thing, that they, I mean, one of the unique things about this particular Cresswell product is that they're using AI to design a uniform, if you like, so that I remember when I opened Icon, we actually hired actually a New York design firm, a uniform designer called Lady and Butler.
I'm very, very familiar with them. I've opened a few hotels with them. Yes.
And they you know they asked me for, and this was before AI, this was back in 2009. You know, they asked me to give them a brief about the brand, about the
Hmm.
hotel, and then the specific restaurants, and then based on that they came up with this concept.
Right.
And they were great. So now with what Cresswell can do is basically key in your sort of brand DNA into the system, and it will design a uniform, you know, or two or three different options of uniform. So you can cut out the designer completely, and then you can then choose your, you know, different materials that you, whether you want it to be sustainable or what you want it made from, and they're able to then come up with something like that. So I think there's around in that sense, if there was somebody doing that type of thing in New York, would that be appealing, or do you think that's too much of a gimmick, or is do does design and AI, do they fit into the same language? Is it more like an oxymoron? I mean, you shouldn't. Some people have said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't mention AI when it comes to design and fashion because that's why you've got designers, right?" So I don't know if you have an opinion about that.
I I mean, I understand and actually fully support the argument that AI shouldn't be replacing designers.
Right,
However, I do admire the idea of a designer creating a digital version of a product
right,
in order to see it on an employee in the space that it's going to be worn.
right,
It's a really fabulous way of getting a better picture of the full design
right.
without having to make any type of surplus or waste products.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yes, there is a use case for it, in my professional opinion, but
Right.
that does not, the use case is not to replace the designers. I mean, you see the products that Lady and Butler makes, they're phenomenal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but I can see a place where you use your camera to, on your phone, to see what it would look like in real life so you can envision the whole look of the front desk agent behind the front desk with the
Exactly.
uniform on and how the light hits it and how it goes with the colors of the interior design. And
Yeah.
that is, really impacting the guest experience. That's part of the
Yeah.
arrival process. So
And I think also the fact that one thing I've noticed over here anyway, and in the States, is that, you know, when you think about the Asian employee or the Hong Kong employee, they tend to be a lot more, um, you know, the sizes don't change that much. If you get on a British Airways plane, everybody's all kinds of different shapes and sizes. But when you think about like the Singapore girl or whatever, they're quite homogenized. So it's easier to design something for somebody that is of a certain proportion that is going to look good on that person, where there's somebody else that doesn't. So these are all factors that they're able to build in. And then I think the idea was that when the employee comes to work for their on their first or just 2 weeks before, they can go to the website and then just order their uniform, and it's delivered to them straight off, without having to come in and be measured and all that type of thing. So if there was a firm like that, say in the States, would that be something that you would look at if you were aware of it, that was able to provide that service?
if we were operating a hotel where a uniform was that tailored, absolutely.
Yeah,
We have a few properties at Bridgeton that are more of a barefoot luxury space, and those uniforms are not necessarily bespoke.
right,
They're much more casual. It's a much looser fitting outfit,
right,
but I certainly see it in the luxury space.
right, right,
Am I hearing this correctly? So uh, if your system, I'm going to just go completely technical, but system is able to pretty much with certain, I guess, fit requirements provided, they can customize to individual. If there are, let's say, 40 uniforms needed for this one hotel,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
all 40 would be to the tailored based on the systems, I guess, calculations. It's going to be customized to that person.
Yep, correct. So basically, let's say you had a hotel like I don't know, 11 Howard or the Taj in Delhi, where they've got, the entire housekeeping uniform, all the engineering department. They've probably got four or five different restaurants, ethnic restaurants, all day dining restaurant, whatever. And so each one of those outlets and each one of those departments, um, this system could design for. So if you were to say that this is a brand based in India or brand based in Hong Kong, and this is a peninsula type of a very high end luxury colonial style, and then you can actually key in all the brand DNA of that brand, and or whether it's Mandarin Oriental or whatever it happens to be, and it would be able to design a specifically uniform. And even let's say the brand was, let's say Shangri-La, a group I used to work for. I mean, there's Shangri-Las in Dubai, there's one in London, there's one in Hong Kong, there's one in Shanghai. So within, different cities could have a different twist on the same brand, based on where they are, whether there's some ethnic locality that you wanted to feature, and then down to the individual outlet or even in the kitchen. So yeah, that's what it's able to do. And then once that's set up, and then they can design it, whether it's for bamboo or plastic or whatever, recycled or upcycled, and then even to the extent that the staff can then order just from the website. Specifically, they can put in their measurements, and it will be cut and it will be sent to them, whether they're one copy, two, three copies, or whatever it happens to be. And then if that staff leaves, the company would then buy that uniform back off of them and recycle it. So this is a
I
complete, you know,
I have a
system.
question for you.
Yes,
So, I think this is the reason Cat have this call. I'm assuming I think this conversation is where we actually started. So I'll give you a little bit background.
yes,
2019. Take 5 minutes on this one.
okay,
2019, I sort of started a project overseas in India, and it's a technology platform project. It was supposed to require 500,000 just to build a
right,
prototype. That
okay,
time, COVID wasn't around, and I come from, let's just say, multiple facets in CPG area, but one of them is also automation in the processes. So one of them was supposed to be, not supposed to be. We did that in 20 years ago, where when you look at something on e-commerce, let's say a Lipton bottle or
yeah,
any kind of packaging, right? Any product, and you look at that Lipton bottle online. There's static images that are e-commerce approved, right? Used to be the world where you fill up the product, there is printing done, packaging material ready, and it takes 2.5 months or 2 months to finally create the photo shoots. Because
yeah,
once product is filled, you take the photos, it goes online, and that's your e-commerce. The
yeah,
world changed where you take the engineering drawing of the layout of the artwork, and then you flop the
yeah,
photographic side of it and the graphical side of it in 15 seconds or less than 15 minutes. You have not only the dynamic images based on the right exact engineering calculations of that wireframe for that
right,
bottle, and then you have the creative that's merged together. It took several years to get it right to even get the products looking right, all of that.
yeah,
That changed a big game in CPG world, which is now you are saving almost 2 months to get it on the digital market right there. And not only that, you're saving a lot of there's a lot of cost savings, time savings, operational efficiencies, right? So all that turned into all these developments in packaging industry, meaning CPG industry. We used to develop these things, roll it out there, and implement into big companies like P&G and Pepsi's and all that. That gave me an idea. 2018, I read reports where in US alone, $250 billion is wasted approximately on average through fashion industry because of returns, and the depreciation is 80 cents over
yeah,
$1 But that's one thing. Another is all the under the water cost and pollution that we are creating. And most of the people don't know this. So a lot of the landfill accumulation, a lot of material that gets used because you'll buy women, as a woman, I blame my kind. 2, 4, and 6 sizes are bought because we know I'm going to return two of them. That is because of e-commerce. E-commerce
Correct.
does a lot of good things, but we also, the brick and mortar took out, also created, the lack of brick and mortar is now creating a lot of pollution, landfill accumulation. At $200 billion is still a big amount, right?
Sure, sure,
On a yearly basis. This
sure.
is in fashion industry. That, from packaging industry to this, I started thinking, um, a human body is an engineering drawing too at the end of the day. If you even get specific few sizes and you can plug it in like a wireframe and get the few photos or whatnot, because mobile is everything. Fast forward, in nutshell, concept would be to create that supply chain. But see, creatively this is all easy, but to align that on a large supply chain level, that's difficult.
Yeah,
Material code drives, individual material code of anything drives the business, right, from end
yeah,
to end. Each product has same thing what you're dealing with. But
yeah,
second is also the frames per second on, let's say, just Amazon. Why are they not doing anything dynamic as much, like true
yeah,
dynamic? Because it's a frames per second is an issue. What I'm trying to tell you is you potentially are talking about a technology that is, if you have that and if you have actually completed it,
yeah.
there is a much bigger picture to this than what you're trying to do.
Mm,
And I have a couple of ideas. If you tell me if it's actually ready, one is I think this is phenomenal to try out. Like Kat is saying, Kat is the practical head sometimes around me. And when it comes to hotel industry, so I let Kat actually tell me stop. But I will say I think she's right. If it's the more on the luck side of the space, this is absolutely a good idea, as far as it's not just the impact, but also I'm all about amplification, marketing amplification,
yeah,
and creating that buzz around why is this is good.
yeah,
Why do we like
exactly. Yeah,
to why do we like to go stay in sometimes the hotels in Asia more than anywhere else? And
yeah,
please don't get me wrong. Why do I like, I still, not because I'm Indian, why do I like to going to Taj? Why do I like going to Niagara Springs in Costa Rica? It is the people and it's how they're presented.
right.
It's extremely important. The
Yeah,
customer experience one to one with them is extremely important.
yeah,
We are not that great in the United States about that. No offense, we are not that, when it comes to that customer service and experience. We are not there, but look and feel of the people on the ground, their behavior, their attitude, all of that matters. But it all comes down to how you market. So even your clothing, when you're trying to convince people to do this with uniforms, I think also the bigger picture to me would be, how is it actually helping the hotel, not just from, okay, looking aligned and customized tailoring, but that taking that 1 or 2 steps beyond, how is this going to help the customer touch point on our grounds and on the properties, and showing a little visualization of
yeah,
it, whether it's in a virtual reality format, could be a good thing to do, to show and tell. And second is a completely bizarre idea, which again, your technology may not be there, but if it's there, one idea I have is at one of our hotels, if we do a fashion show, we have a certain vision in mind for 2025. We want to bring digital trials on runway, which nobody has
right.
done in New York City. But I am looking for people that can create these physical mirrors or something, the big formats
Mm,
on the ground, that we will do that convert. So it actually shows how something like this can convert into, from looking to buying,
yes.
goes from looking to buying, but trying
Yeah.
with confidence, not just 2, 4, and 6 came. Let's reduce, let's make these women or men 80% more confident than 50% more. That's a main problem in fashion industry today.
Mm, mm,
People are not confident what they're buying. They're not talking about it, but they're not confident. So they are buying 3 sizes. So what
yeah.
we're trying to talk about, the digital AI and customization of tailoring,
Yes.
was much beyond the hotel industry in a
Yeah.
much larger form and shape if
Sure.
it's done right. But the
Sure.
one big other problem is also supply chain, connecting the dots from end to end,
Yeah.
from technology trial, from the system trial, to going into the actual, uh, each individual operational standpoint of that particular material code, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have I don't know where you stand, but this is why Kat, I think, brought me on here was
Yeah.
uh,
Basically,
to
you're
think
right,
that, yeah,
and
there
the
is an
way you,
opportunity that goes beyond uniforms.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they the whole cycle is now complete. I mean, they're live now. It's ready to go. I mean, they've been prototyping this for the last sort of 2 years, but it's now live. They're supplying uniforms already to like 16 schools, school uniforms in
Oh,
Hong Kong.
cool.
They've got already doing school uniforms, and the one of the founders. I mean, the factory's been there for 25 years at least. I mean, they've always been doing this, but it's now very high tech. I'll send you some information about it that
Yeah.
shows. Um, it's amazing what they've achieved, and there's a sort of a umbrella company called Hainan, who is the company that sort of sits on top of this, the factory, and
Hmm.
then there's Infinity Innovation. So they've got different lines, but the business model definitely works. So what they're trying to do now is to get into where they considered to be low hanging fruit, which is the hospitality industry, because it is so wasteful. And because, I was able to tell them as a hotelier, look, how much inventory we used to have to stock and how much we were spending. And they said, this is crazy. You guys are just wasting so much money. You don't need to do it this way. And now they're ready to go. So my role really is just to sort of to open up this discussion with people like yourselves and hoteliers to let them know that it's available. I'll be very happy to supply you with the PowerPoint presentations that I have on it, and even to introduce you to Paul Chan if you want to meet him, who's the owner, the founder in Hong Kong. He's based in Hong Kong. But yeah, what you're talking about, and the Mark
Sorry, I didn't
Russell.
mean to go on a tendrum, just you know, but
No, 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 no.
to
It's
give you an
it's it's
idea
very
where I'm
good.
coming from. It's
Yeah,
very specific, and
yeah.
I see so
Mark
many
Mark
connecting
Russell.
dots through this.
Yeah, Mark Russell, the CEO, his background is supply chain. He took Liz Claiborne to Hong Kong. His wife is he lives in the Philippines. His wife is a Filipino. He spent the last 25 years in Asia, and he knows the fashion industry very very well. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you sussed it out. So they would absolutely love to get involved with you to do this fashion show idea of actually bringing the tech into reality. I'm sure they
Well,
would love
listen, I'm
to.
looking for somebody actually in the technology
Yeah,
space to be able to bring. The goal is to, and this the doors can open up so widely through this.
yeah,
I mean, you
yeah,
have somebody has no. I mean, they have probably idea, but to your point, great. They are trying to do low hanging thing. In our case, I think yes, the opportunity is. I mean, obviously we would like to benefit as a hotel, but there's so much that could be done through hotel
yes,
industry, but you need to actually being able to have a buzzword. You need to be able to create. So actually, sorry, two things. I really think that impact is also important. Localization is important, like Kat said.
yeah,
But United States is also, as a country, I feel like if we just even look at that market as a bigger picture, not everything is going to be about impact. Not everything,
no,
like when it comes to the end consumers, they are not about impact at the end of the day. But if we if there is right amount of like that end point benefits that can be driven by the customers more than
yeah,
just the hotel itself, other hotels like the franchisee hotels will want to do this. But it's a
sure,
matter of
sure,
showing and telling, just saying this is how much I'm saving this these days.
exactly.
Tell me, Kat, I feel like it's also becoming like a air. Everybody's like, yeah, sure, you gave $50,000 to the community over there to develop a school. Great. They don't want to talk about it, but some people don't care nowadays because
Yeah,
too many of these things are happening already.
yeah,
What are we doing to make this also beneficial in a way for that end customers at the end of the day too,
yeah,
whether it's to feel good, whether it's to whatever, like touch point. I think I focus on that more than anything, at least in my mind right now, because that is what will drive the business owners to do what they need to
yeah.
do.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think if you like you said, if a lot of hotels and people in hospitality industry say, "Oh, we do this or we do that," a lot of it is greenwashing. But this is actually something that is tangible and you can
Mhm.
measure it and you can bring it into reality. And never mind if you have to ship it from China, you can always ship it on a boat. I mean, it doesn't have to come, so but the point is that it is something that's available. It's some nobody else is really doing it. This is very new, and it's a great story. I mean, there's it's quite a compelling PR story. To be
Yeah, absolutely.
to be the first to do something like this.
Yeah, I
It
mean, we
shows
also, as a hotel, would like to be the first
yeah, it
to be
shows
part
that
of
you're
it.
very
Why not?
progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're progressive and everything. So
And the
I
idea
think
I have is very extensive, just so you know about how this can be done on a through fashion and hospitality and
yeah,
fashion show. Very specific, because I was
yeah,
going to go look at a company called Naked Lab. They created these mirrors and they tried to go to Zara's and all these guys. So you're basically going and doing the trials through mirrors, and the goal would be to be able to just do the conversion right there, and it
right,
gets shipped to your home. So instead of, but now you tried it, how you look it. My ultimate goal would be an Amazon style situation where you went to buy a toothpaste. Now there are 10 types of brushes that's given based on my look and feel and fit in my hair. That
yeah,
that code will not be cracked anytime soon by in fashion industry, but that should be the
yeah,
goal. But this fashion show, all about all about fashion show would be creating an experiential thing that will blow up like anything. But
it's
the
fantastic.
strategy has to be strategy on how this benefits the the,
Yeah,
the technology guy, the how it benefits the hotels, how it benefits in general a little bit long term has to also be analyzed. I don't
yeah,
know enough, but I from what I'm sensing, I think you guys they are creating exactly what I would have loved to be seen before even
yeah,
COVID.
right,
And the idea was there. It's just nobody wanted to buy it.
yeah.
So
Well, I'm delighted that thank you, Kat, for introducing us. And I think that, like you said, it's actually very cutting edge. It's very exciting, and it is. Um, I don't have any personal investment in the company or anything like that. I'm sort of just doing this. I mean, to keep myself occupied more than anything. So I don't have a sort of financial interest in this at all. But it's from what I've been able to understand and from everything that's been shared with me, what you've just described, DJ, is exactly what they're doing now. And I know that I'll be able to. I'll share with you what I've got, and you can have a good look through it. And then if you would like to, meet with Paul or Mark and have a chat like you are now, they can give you a little bit more. Information, and I'm absolutely sure. I mean, Paul is a very progressive marketing guy, and he would be delighted. In fact, Mark Russell lived in New York for quite a while, so he knows the lay of the land there, and I'm sure he'd be happy to come over there and supervise the whole thing himself.
no, so
If
I, Richard, if we have a, I think, Kat, stop me if I am oversaying, but if we have an opportunity to strategize this well, because like I said, we are working. I'm actually looking at the contract right now today for a fashion event. It is a little bit too late for September because it's only 2 months. The way I see it, let's say if there are four designers who wants to show something, and this as well, it's a little bit late to strategize that. But I kind of have an like very specific idea about this, and if this
okay,
can be talked through and how hotel can without breaking the bank on hotels end, right, Kat?
sure,
If there is a benefit here, we can start that phase one, phase two, phase three,
yeah,
and then aim for that end game. That honestly is going to be much bigger driving factor. I can see hotel from PR and marketing and other benefits, but then also the company itself. These guys in Hong Kong, they themselves has a humongous picture to enter in a
sure,
market. I also just I think there is this one company in Israel that is working on or has been working on different things in the retail market in fashion industry. So to just to give you an idea, I think it can get competitive. So
yeah,
sooner people dive into this in a little bit more broader,
sure,
like strategic way, I think it's good.
yeah,
um, so conversation
okay,
would be good as far as it benefits, and we are not making the hotel breaking their banks. That's all we that's all
that's
I can say.
brilliant. Okay, well, thanks ever so much. And I think I've taken up about an hour of your time, so I really appreciate it. But Kat, thanks a lot for pulling all this together. I'm sorry I kept getting confused about the days, but but
No
anyway,
problem.
and
I'm
everything's
glad we were able to make it work, especially with the time difference and everyone's travel schedule.
and
I believe everyone has
yeah,
each other's contact information.
yeah,
And Richard, if you're interested in speaking with people more specifically in the laundry and textile space based here in New York, I'm happy to make those introductions
yeah.
um, from a laundry facility operator to a textile supplier. I have all those contacts,
Okay.
so you let me know.
Well, that's great. No, I think to be able to do something like what you were describing, I mean, whether September's too late or not, but the fact that we could, you know, I think it's just such a worthwhile idea. I mean, like when I got involved with Hotel Icon, I did it because I felt it was something with a purpose. You know, I mean, it was the first teaching research hotel in the world, fully integrated building, and I was with that. I stuck it out. With 13 years I spent of my life developing it, and it broke my heart to leave. But at the same time, if I see something that I think is got real value and is good for the industry and good for the community, then I like to support it, and that's kind of why I'm introducing this to you. So I think I'd love to continue the conversation. I'll share um, what you guys have said with Mark and Paul, and I hope we can take it to the next step. But thanks ever so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
your.
Richard.
It's been fantastic. You've really got me excited. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
Fabulous.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Kat. Thanks a
Great
lot.
to see you both. Take care.
Be here.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.